Hello, Reality Sandwich community. Holly here with another Share Your Experience episode. And today I am joined by my friend April Pride, who I'm super stoked to connect with. I think we've been chatting about getting this going for a couple of months now, and we are finally here. So thank you for joining me today, April. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little about you.
My name is April Pride, and I think I've been most accurately described professionally as a creative entrepreneur, working in cannabis since 2015 and started exploring psychedelics from a consumer protection standpoint about 4 years ago as a podcast host. And in the last couple of years have launched an integration platform called Set, after one of the pillars of psychedelic work, set and setting. And my, like I said, my interest in these spaces is really out of consumer protection, knowing that there are 3 out of 4 people that are consuming psychedelic medicine are doing so on their own outside of a clinical environment. So Set really aims to be an educational resource. We've partnered with clinicians so that our educational resources, integration tools are all clinician-backed and evidence-based. So that's very, very important to the work that I do, because I am not a medical expert and I hear a lot of stories. And so to, go back to the science is always really where, that's where Set starts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is something we're going to have to continue to lean on as psychedelics evolve, as maintaining the integrity of these medicines and heralding them into the future with safety. And like you said, setting and safety. I feel like we need to add safety on the end just because it feels right.
Yeah. And there's specifics around that too, right? You can kind of cover that in setting, but I think that people overlook that setting should also include the medicine that you choose. And that's where I think safety is. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
It's been a few decades. We could maybe rewrite the rules.
We're evolving.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, well, okay. So today, I want to hear a little bit about some psychedelic experiences of your own. I know you've dabbled with a few different types of medicine. A couple you mentioned maybe wanting to share some stories about, and that's kind of the spirit of this series, is people talking us through where they were, about their set and setting and particular experiences with these plant medicines. So yeah, I'm all ears for some experiences of yours. Let's dig in.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, because I actually don't talk that, I work in psychedelics, I have a podcast about psychedelics, but I don't really talk about my experiences that much. Mostly probably because I don't remember every detail. I'm always shocked when people remember all the details. I'm like, how do you remember that? Wow.
Yeah, it usually comes through like chunks of,
right.
Yeah.
I think the other part too that is important is people are surprised at how few experiences I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's subjective. Like by few, I've had under 50, but of the substances like we're talking about, whether it's peyote, I've only tried that one time, I've had ayahuasca that was bundled in a cacao treat with psilocybin at super low doses, but that's my only ayahuasca experience.
That's an interesting one. Never heard that.
I think people think I'm getting on a plane and going into jungles and tripping all the time. I'm like, no. The one thing that I will say is that even before I started working in this space, medicine always found me, right? I wasn't, and I didn't have the understanding of things when I was in my late teens, 20s, 30s. I was just sort of open to anything, but certainly not with intention.
Right. Not a ceremonial kind of a situation. Yeah.
So the fact that medicine just found me, for these more significant experiences, or the opportunities presented themselves, and then I was able to, make the most out of the gift that is before me, has been I guess lucky, but I always like to stress to people that the people that I talk to that have had experiences that they can't stop talking about, including microdosing, it's always with like, I wasn't ready and then I felt called to it. Right. So there's no need to force, like, I got to check off DMT. I got to check off Bufo. I got to check off, just life is long and, these medicines aren't really going anywhere. So, yeah.
True. Yeah, agree. I think that I I've only done ayahuasca one time, but that was always what I had heard too from other friends that I eventually ended up sitting with was like, well, you'll know when it's time. Like it becomes very obvious when that nudge hits you and the medicine calls you and arrives at the right time. And it's so true. Like it really, really does work that way.
Yeah.
I've had also many opportunities to sit in ceremonies that it just literally wasn't for me. I just knew in my gut, like, even though the location was great or the people were wonderful or the timing is right, like, no, I don't, there's nothing that the medicine has for me right now. So I'm not going to go and sit in that ceremony. Just, yeah, it's a weird communion you start to kind of have with psychedelics once you work with them intentionally, I feel like.
Yeah, because you realize how fucking powerful they are,
Yeah, like there's a
and
whole language there that's happening.
yes, and what I've learned is that it's an amplifier of however in all of these compounds are amplifiers of however you're feeling. So if you're having a bad day and you have a psilocybin journey scheduled for that night, you're allowed to postpone.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Even I feel that way even with things like cannabis. Maybe almost especially with stuff like that because we just consider that as like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe you just need to puff a joint. I'm like, really, that's exactly what I should not do right now because I'm really anxious or what, this is not the right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Setting for it. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
all of these medicines are powerful, and I think most people I know that have had like tried cannabis and have tried what are considered more crazy psychedelics have, cannabis will send us into realms that we never planned and sometimes hand our ass to us in ways that we never thought.
I have said that so many times to people. Like, I have experimented with a lot of substances, but I don't think anything's ever fucked me up more than overdoing it on THC.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Which is wild considering, of course, the access and availability, especially with like Delta, all the different Deltas in the hemp market and stuff. It's like, hey guys,
Yeah.
like you can still get pretty radically thrown for a loop. So
Yeah.
tread lightly. It's
Yeah.
not a joke.
You can get it at gas stations in Florida, just like you can get malt liquor, and both of them will fuck you up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Tread lightly. Be
Right.
careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, I mean, the experience that I would like to revisit, because I think it's part of the integration process too, is to talk about this, is an experience that I had in Mexico, unplanned, went on a family vacation to a resort that we always went to together with other families in Jalisco, which is the region, Puerto Vallarta and south on the west coast of Mexico. There's a resort there called Las Alamandas, and my ex-husband found it because we needed to go somewhere sunny, and I like to go to places that are, not obvious. Like, I don't want to go to a resort, but I want to go somewhere that's nice and has like good food, but I don't want my slippers by my bed at night,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Some good
and
middle
so,
ground.
yeah, this place is old school Mexico resort. Like, really well done. It is owned by the daughter of a guy that was a wealthy British financier, a Jewish guy who came up from nothing. And when he was 19, he got a very Catholic woman who was Chilean pregnant, and she had been to come from the largest the patina tin fortune in Chile. And this property was in her family. So
Wow.
her mom
Okay.
died in childbirth. So she inherited this even though it wasn't her mom's family hated him because he wasn't Catholic. And
Right.
so this became her place and his place. He ended up buying a bunch of property around Mexico, around this resort, so that he would be close by with his other kids and stuff. It's fascinating.
Wow. Okay.
And
Very
so it
cool.
was only hers until about 25 years ago. And she would invite the Rolling Stones down and famous people, and they would just hang out in this 3,000 acre
Oh my gosh.
resort.
Amazing.
And so I say all that, it's really magical and kind of hidden. Um,
So
and
setting
was,
on lock. Okay.
yeah, but yes, exactly. And so for the first, I guess, 8 years we were going, there were a couple of different GMs. And then this one year that we went, Isabel is her name, Isabel Goldsmith. She brought in a new GM, and he had worked at resorts all around the world and was less of a local guy and more tapped into all around Mexico, not just in this one district. And so he came to dinner and he was like, so there is a man who is traveling, who is a shaman from Guadalajara, and he is licensed. I'm going to use words that probably aren't exactly correct, but licensed to carry his medicine by the World Health Organization, because he is actually a shaman. Like, I'm like, oh, well, that
Okay. Yeah.
all sounds fascinating. Like, yeah. And he said he would host ceremony here if you want. And I was like, are you kidding? This is exactly the place that I would want to do something like that. And he's here and he wants to do this. Yeah.
Yes, please.
And I'm with my two best friends. Like, this is crazy. This is amazing. But I didn't have a lot of time to plan for it. And I was not working in psychedelics yet. Is that true? I was, I had just started, I had started a podcast the year before on psychedelics, but I hadn't started content on psychedelics until like 3 months before this happened. So I was still fresh to understanding. I think I had talked about high potency THC and then psilocybin, but hadn't really talked about, meaning that means I hadn't really researched it either. Peyote is the medicine that he was allowed to travel with. So I didn't know exactly what to expect in terms of the effects. But I knew that we were going to be on the beach all night, starting after sunset, and that ceremony would be through the whole night. And everything was set up for us on the beach with a bonfire in this cove where we were protected. We could easily access a bathroom, but really we were going to be outside. And I grew up in Virginia on the coast, so the beach is like, I don't know, it's just a magical place. I can't even believe I got to experience this. What I should have been prepared for, but I wasn't, is I really have a sensitive stomach. I don't have to go to the bathroom, but I get terrible stomach aches that just persist. And
Distracting.
so
Yeah.
the way that I think I wasn't prepared, right? I probably could have done something with my system, a dieta of some kind, right, in the days before, which I know that's typically reserved for ayahuasca, but let's just apply it here. So
So
maybe
like last minute. So it's like, yeah, what are
kind
you
of,
going to do?
yeah, it really was. I was more concerned about the fact that I can see the place where my children are going to be sleeping. Their dad was with them. He did not participate.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that they were okay. They
Yeah.
knew what I was doing too. The shaman did not speak any English, and the person that he was with, English was not their first language. So that was really interesting because there are downloads that the shaman is receiving that he wants to share with you.
Sure.
right? About this is what this is your spirit animal. This is like, oh my God, this I wish I could speak Spanish. So that a having a language barrier in some ways like reinforced the reverence for this leader,
Mhm.
right? Because I couldn't just shoot the shit with him, right? You know? And he wasn't going to get caught up in like trying to small talk us, right? He was there
Yeah.
for a purpose. And to be able to witness how he is creating ceremony and tending to spirit and energy so that everything is clear and he's welcoming in, good things for us, I think was not, just as a Western woman, this who kind of went to church every once in a while, but it's totally different. It just was beautiful to watch. But I think I was more interested in the background of how this person came to be in this place as this, yeah, spiritual leader. And what does that mean? Yes, we're imbibing, but you're here to help me connect with spirit. But I can't talk to you about that. Right. So I just have to kind of feel into this and
Mhm.
trust that you're holding space in a way that it's going to happen. Um, which is what we should all be thinking all the time. Like, oh, I can't control this.
I can't talk my way out of this or through this either. I just
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, so I ended up lying on my side for most of the time because my stomach hurt. And what was before me was the ocean, clouds, and the side of a cliff with like all these crazy cacti. And the whole night was the most gentle experience. There was nothing there was no violent retching or trips to the restroom, even though I didn't feel well. All of the things that I was seeing were so like slow motion and waving cacti like hi in clouds where it's the middle of the night, so you're seeing shooting stars.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
no light pollution, and everyone should have that experience that is enhanced by some form of psychedelics, because and by that experience I mean in nature.
Mhm.
And I didn't make this decision at the time, but I have since. I don't take anything more than a microdose of psilocybin unless I'm in nature. Even like a low dose, a half a gram, if I have to socialize, it just, it's an inward journey for me. And like,
Mhm.
yeah. So,
Need room to let that happen. Yeah.
yeah. And
Spaciousness.
yeah, I don't know what that experience with peyote would have been like if I just weren't focused on all the natural beauty around me when I was feeling not so great. I was also
Mhm.
going through some stuff personally. I knew that my husband and I were getting divorced. Our kids didn't know yet. So we're at our family vacation spot. I know it's going to be for one of the last times together. It's just a very
Mm.
emotional coming to terms with choices that were important to make. But I had no idea. In retrospect, looking, at myself on the beach at that time, I had no idea what I was really moving into.
Right.
And the surrender that you just have to come to when you're not feeling well, you're in a foreign country, you can't speak to the person who has just given you something that doesn't make you feel well, your kids are asleep, you like, okay, I'm just going to lie here and appreciate what I can and not let my mind spiral, because like anyway, it was an exercise in like, yeah, things are bad for periods of time, but they get better. And sometimes you just have to, I think this word surrender is what came out of that experience. Like I had to just surrender to how I felt physically, even though this was the experience that I thought was going to like blow my mind. Really, this is just about like being. And so the shaman did talk to the three of us, like told the translator, my two friends were white deer. That was their spirit animal. And I forget the significance of the white deer, except for the fact that they can be, I think, alone, nature. I don't quite remember. It's a stag. I shouldn't just say white deer, stag specifically. But mine was the hummingbird, because I take the stories of the plants to the people.
Oh,
And
that's
this
so
man
sweet.
knew nothing about me or what my
Yeah,
work
of
had
course.
been, you know, working in
That's so
cannabis and
sweet.
working in psychedelics. And my friends just like, we were like, oh, really? And I'm also, they were like, that makes sense. But so then when I moved out, I found on Etsy these stained glass mobiles that are hummingbirds. And I bought one for each of my boys to keep in their room at their dad's house.
Mm,
You know, just like,
that's sweet.
okay, this
I
is,
love that.
this is your consolation prize. Like, fuck. But it felt like something that light would come through.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so I got a lot out of that experience, out of that experience, but certainly not, I haven't talked about it in this much depth ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, and I mean, I know a lot of psychedelics are like this, but it seems like very specifically because of the set and setting, and maybe the substance. I don't know if the substance would have changed the experience much, honestly, but the forced mindfulness and presence. Well, not forced, because you do have to surrender to it. Things can go all kinds of awry if you choose not to surrender, and that's when shit gets weird and you're the person like freaking out running around the beach like a crazy person, you know.
Yep. That's the
I say
next
that
one.
because I have been that person once before in a ceremony that I was just thinking about. But I was very resistant to the surrender. But gosh, yeah, the that's a lot to have to be mindful with. And you said this was kind of like this is a multi-hour. You know, we're talking like
Oh yeah.
all night. You know, all night long.
At least 8 hours.
That's
Because when
long.
the sun came up, I went back to my room. Um, Jim, ex-husband, was not awake yet, and I just sat and journaled. And you know, the morning after or any period after you start to the medicine, you're coming down from the medicine, sounds are different. Everything is different. And yeah, whenever I'm up at 6 a.m. because it's been all night and I'm on drugs,
Yeah.
it's not always peaceful. You
No.
know,
Yeah.
you're like, get me to bed. So, no, oh God, I
Yeah.
don't want to face
I
this.
wish to God I was sleeping. Why am I here right now? Yeah.
Yes. And I did not
Praying
feel
for
that
sleep.
way. I was grateful to be, you know, at the ocean and journaling and having just had this magical experience at a place that meant so much to me, but was going to take on very different meaning in
Mm-hmm.
the future. So it was a nice, like, kind of like, you know, smell the coffee between, like, just, it's not going to ever be like this again. So,
God, how perfect. I mean,
yeah.
what a random scenario. Hey, this shaman's rolling through on what might be a really impactful trip for you anyway. And he's just going to help carry you across the finish line here of this experience.
And the best part is that I thought it was free. I had no idea. I guess that got lost in translation. So the bill came at the end of the trip and it was like $800.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh, I
Oh, okay.
promise it was worth every penny. I'm like, so
Yeah.
that's also the thing that I have around the psychedelic industry is, you know, this man was worth every penny. I'm sure we paid the G. Who knows? You know,
Yeah, of course,
But
of course.
wow, that was a lucky experience. And, not a lot of people can fly to Mexico, pay $800. So I
Yeah.
think it can be replicated minus the amazing shaman. But if you really want to sit still with nature under the influence of plant medicine, that is available to you for the low, low price of your time. Yeah.
Well, and who knows? Maybe had that been like presented up front more clearly, maybe you wouldn't have been as inclined. Maybe you would have started to come up with reasons why, like, well, maybe that's not the, I don't know, should we, shouldn't we? So,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
It's possible. Yeah. I
it's
didn't have a
possible.
care in the world.
Oh, that's kind of a funny piece, though.
Yeah. And my husband's like, you just think he's doing that out of the goodness of his heart? I'm like, no, no one told
Maybe,
me.
possibly.
Perhaps he needed to practice for the 1000th time.
Yeah, seemed like a good guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that I'm like picturing the cacti right now, like
I
waving on
know.
the. Did you have like any desire to want to get into the water, or were you just like, I am so put down, like I'm still?
Yeah, we were only allowed to put our feet in the water,
Yeah.
right? There was no sacred geometry.
Hmm.
Like it wasn't, there were no fractals in terms of the visuals. It really was as if the nature had come alive.
Hmm.
But it all looked exactly the same. And I think that is why I connected with it so much. I'm like, oh, this is what's happening with the plants in my house when I'm
Right.
not watching. They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
here. They're all
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
their thing.
Yeah. This is always going on just behind that little veil that we can't
Yeah.
access all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Rather than
it's,
hyper psychedelic. So, I mean, that's kind of nice. Like you can sometimes I like experiences like that where you obviously there's a lot going on physically and mentally, but like you're functional. So there's still like gives you like a little bit of element of control in a sense that like I'm still in control of my body. So I think that helps with the presence as well for
yes.
me. Yeah.
Yes. But I have a hard time with visuals. So I think I feel like, one of the experiences that we may still talk about is with DMT. And I've only had DMT out of a vape pen. Um, and so you can control it, right, up and down very easily. And I think the reason that I appreciate that compound so much is because it's a guaranteed visual break from sometimes it's not about my brain being high.
Hmm.
It's not about, I just want to see cool stuff. Like it's, and I can't. And so I've talked, I have access to experts like you do. I'm like, what's going on here? And the explanation that I've gotten that I think is true, and I've shared with so many people who are like, that makes sense, is when we're younger, one of the purposes of this medicine is to help you reflect on life experience, right? And be curious about it, come to different conclusions, come to peace, whatever the case may be. When we're younger, we don't have a lot of life experience. So it becomes more of an external experience where we see stuff because there's not really much to explore on the inside, and this is very general terms. Some of us
Hmm.
we get it early, right? And so there is a lot of stuff to unpack. But for the most part, when you're young, you don't want to look at it. Everything's fine, right? But as we get older, we have more life experience. It becomes more of an internal experience when we take these medicines. And so you don't get the visuals as much because you're
Mm.
contemplating and considering. And I'm like, oh, that makes
Yeah.
sense. And that totally sucks.
Yeah, that's not fair.
So DMT, I feel like, is like, you want to just like say hi to your plants and be reminded of how spectacular the wallpaper is.
Yeah.
That's really what does it for me.
Well, let's talk about that. I want to talk about the DMT because I have smoked DMT. Well, let me say I have smoked DMT a couple of times and I've never broke through. Once I was smoking it out of a pipe, just raw DMT crystals, and once with a vape pen.
Mhm.
Both experiences very cool. I very much enjoyed an altered feeling high. I mean, the high is lovely. Like the
Yeah.
body high is wonderful. And some altered visuals, but I have never made it to the waiting room or broke through and saw entities of any kind whatsoever. Was that your experience? Like completely altered reality in that way?
The first time I tried it, I could hear voices around me. I was reminded that there were people in the room that I was with, but I couldn't see them. I was
Hmm.
in my eyes were open, but I couldn't see them. I was experiencing not other entities though. Never. I've never, and I know this about myself. I hold back. I try to control things. I don't want to go
Hmm.
too deep. And I've gotten a lot better about that just because I'm trained now.
Life.
But I still don't think that I've allowed myself to pull in that vape pen so hard
Yeah.
that I'm going to start communing with aliens.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I haven't done that. Yeah, but that is available to us should we decide to. But
Yeah,
no,
it's
I
there.
haven't gone there yet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm so curious about because when I talk to people about DMT, there's so many similar stories. I mean, we know this just in reading and hearing from other experts about DMT, common themes, um, common experience, entering a type of a waiting room kind of a situation. These little elves, other types of alien beings that appear, and it blows my mind because why are people seeing the same thing?
Yeah.
Where is this? And I've read just like all kinds of crazy, interesting theories that are just so fun to mull over. I think David J. Brown's most recent book, he was saying, or he posed the idea of like, okay, well, what if that is another universe and these little beings are also blasting off on something in a similar way and entering the same waiting room, and they see us and they're like, we go somewhere and we see these crazy weird fleshy looking things with fur and clothing, and they're having the same experience with us and we're just there like bug-eyed and gawking at each other, but I love thinking about what is this place because it's something. I like to think of it as something somewhere, or why else would everybody's brain or many people's brains be experiencing the same thing? It just blows my mind.
That's how I feel about sacred geometry too, right? Like we're
Yeah.
all seeing the same. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's so wild. So what for you then, what are some of the primary differences in the experience of peyote versus DMT?
The sacred geometry for sure. Like the way things look. And maybe there's more peyote I could have taken. I did have
Sure.
another cup, but I mean, my stomach was kind of like, okay, I'll take more, but I think I'm poisoning myself.
Yeah, probably
Um,
good.
so I think there's a potentially a dose thing, but I don't know. I haven't again followed up with anyone that's taken large doses of peyote, and I think anything's possible with depending on the
Sure.
dose.
Yeah.
Um, DMT, I love because you can be in a room with people and you all can take a head off the pen. You're together, but you're in your own world.
Mhm.
And then my favorite, I always have music, of course. And I do have a lot of plants in my house. I joke that I can either date or I can keep my plants alive. So my plants are fabulous and I am totally single, you know, but I like how the music feels when I'm on DMT,
Mhm.
and the sounds, like you have these auditory hallucinations, right? Where you don't know where the sound is coming from. And then all of a sudden you'll hear a person laugh or someone will be like, whoa. And you're reminded that you're not alone and that other people are having their experience. And I don't know, that feels, it's a different way of socializing around
Yeah.
substances, but it's so short lived that then after you've had it, you can come back and feel like, but I find that when I'm with people, we don't say, what did you just see? What did you just experience? There's more of a commentary about what we can all see, like, oh, the wallpaper, or the, it's not, or
Mhm.
the music sounds. There's not a like, I went into this place and just hung out with elves. So
Yeah.
I have to wonder, I know that some of my friends do go there, but I wonder if a lot of us, because we're doing this on our own in the wild, not with an
Mhm.
expert, not with a guide who can say, okay, stop inhaling. Okay, keep doing more, right? Because I don't
Right.
know if you saw that there was a clinical trial in DMT and its first phase is looking very, very promising for depression. And microdosing DMT has become something that I'm getting a lot of questions about.
Mhm.
I think because it is so easy to, with vape pens to really, but I don't know. I'm not, again, not a medical expert, but I am really, really
Mhm.
curious. Like when you microdose DMT, you're not supposed to see anything.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how will that, yeah, what constitutes a microdose of DMT? 'Cause, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine, again, my experience is so limited, but even just taking like little puffs off a pen, that's not subperceptual. There's
No.
still, I mean, there's still
Exactly.
very much something happening to my body that I would consider I'm in an altered state.
Yes,
I'm
for
not going to
sure.
work and
Yeah.
like taking my psilocybin in the morning, but I'm not going to be ripping my DMT pen. Um,
And I don't think in a clinical trial they're giving them a pen, right? They're probably,
no, probably
yeah.
not, which is interesting too. I wonder, like, yeah. I mean, I think that there is antidepressive potential with probably every single psychedelic plant medicine that we could possibly conceive of. I mean, that's sort of the
Yeah.
essence of their magic, in my opinion. Like, that's the number one. Everything else comes from there. We live in such a depressive society. Somehow we've all gotten to this place where it seems easier to become sad or disheartened or low or traverse the human experience. And we're, I think, probably not more than all of time. I just think people are more willing to talk about it. And so we have to consider the fact that we need to find ways to lighten the load and open up our hearts and remember what we're doing here.
Yeah. I mean, if learning how to be present is the one thing that we can take from these experiences, like this moment is our only moment. Yeah, and that certainly is one way to fight depression, right? If they say depression is looking at the past, not being able to change it, anxiety is considering the future and not knowing what to expect and losing that control. The depression thing that tracks for me in recent years for sure. I host a monthly psychedelic salon here in Seattle, and Monday is our salon. It's the first Monday of every month, and it's psychedelics and depression. And we're going to have a licensed family and marriage counselor and an MD. Both of them work with ketamine, and one, Dr. Darcy Constance, she's like she's on the board of the board of psychedelic medicine oversight federal, that
Yeah.
something that was
The
just
board. The
formed
board.
to make sure that facilitators and medical experts who are working with psychedelics are held accountable. So you have to be licensed, you register with
Mhm.
them. It's like, it's a professional organization. Um, and then she also is a researcher on clinical trials because here in Seattle, you're in Washington State too. We've
Mhm.
got a really thriving research community. So we've been preparing for this psychedelics and depression salon, and I'll shoot over my podcast expert opinion. And she's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't see where you see that at all. That is not what the science is telling me. I'm like, okay. That's why we have you, or else I'd be sending people off in these wrong directions.
Yeah.
But the real thing to remember is that unless there has been a clinical trial on any of these compounds and we have data that shows that it does this, it doesn't do this, it's different for women in this way because of hormone, there's actually not a lot of research on how it's different for women. We suspect an indigenous wisdom that's been shared with me by others is that women do experience these medicines differently than men. And it does vary depending on where they are on their cycle, and
Mhm.
meaning their monthly cycle, their life cycle, right? So I think that depression for women is so hormonal, right? And we know that these compounds can be estrogen antagonists.
Mhm.
So there is something that, or no, sorry, serotonin antagonists, which estrogen is too. So as our estrogen levels ebb and flow, bringing in these psychedelics can be very, very helpful. And so I don't know if maybe DMT is like a low dose of that.
That's something that I'm so grateful to start seeing more of. I mean, I loved that years ago in the cannabis space when we started talking a bit more about using cannabis to support women's health and treating endometriosis and all other, PCOS and these other things. And now there's just such a big turn of talking about psychedelics for women specifically. I mean, many of your podcasts talk about that. Some of the content you've written with Reality Sandwich talks about that.
Yeah.
And I've been encountering these other women like Christy Nault, who speaks pretty much exclusively to that with her microflow program that she recommends cycle syncing with.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a couple others I know that I've just come across recently. And I'm so stoked to hear about this because I mean, we know historically we kind of get a raw deal when it comes to any sort of scientific research
Yeah.
related to pharmaceuticals, certainly, and in other clinical trials. It wasn't until like the early 90s that we even started including women in clinical trials for pharmaceutical drugs. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we know we've had a huge disservice when it comes to our health. So the fact that I feel like women are getting more of a fair shake in psychedelic research, or it's bubbling up that way, feels really, really promising. I'm super stoked about that.
So, yes, what you alluded to, which is that women are not included in clinical trials, persists. And the conditions for which psychedelic therapy is being researched, women are much more likely to suffer from, whether it's depression, anxiety, sleep issues, right? So,
Mhm.
trauma. Um, Unfortunately, now substance use, specifically alcohol, women are more likely to die from alcohol related issues than men for the first time ever as of last
Yeah.
year.
Wow.
So we know that psychedelics can be helpful, yet 27% of clinical participants are women in psychedelic medicine trials. The MAPS trial, 50% of participants were women. So that
Okay. Yeah.
I want to just, they get
It's
a bad
good.
rap for a lot of
Okay.
things, but well done. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we continue to see that trend in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just, I mean, women, race, just like, hey, these medicines help everyone,
Yeah.
but we need to understand, yeah,
Hmm.
the
With you.
specifics of,
Yeah.
so we can have a blueprint to help people do it in a way that really is optimal, I think.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I used to say this. My background's in cannabis too, and I just, 10, 15 years ago, I always had this vision of like, I just want to be able to figure out how we can tailor these medicines for each person. I mean, I just want to see pharmaceuticals start to fall by the wayside as okay, even if it's a pill format, great. Here's your pill. This is your cannabinoid percentage and terpene ratios. Like I always had this vision of being able to
Yeah.
map all these conditions. And I want that for psychedelics too. Like, this is your dose, this is your plant medicine, this is your program in your regimen so that we're addressing root cause and then you can move on from this rather than just continue to put band-aids on our issues. And maybe it'll be iboga, maybe it'll be microdosing, DMT, maybe it will be a mix of a lot of these things depending on the person. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just continue to hold that vision for the future because
Yeah.
I think the possibility's there.
The bespoke formulations for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
So,
Yeah.
what a vision. Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
so. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for sharing about your experiences. I
Oh,
hope that
thanks for asking me.
talking through the peyote experience was an integration tool for you. I think that, yeah, talking about these
Yes.
things helps us all.
I'm sure that these conversations you have with everybody, for them to be able to relive oftentimes transformative experiences, helps.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it's such a gift for me because it unlocks things that maybe I forgot about, experiences I've had too. So I get to integrate every time I have a conversation, which is
Right.
what an amazing gift. So
Yes.
thank you so much, April.